Hi, and welcome to Business Unusual. I'm Liz Whitehead, co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds, and I'm here as always with Heather Cox.
I'm Heather Cox, co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds.
And we're going to talk about business unusual, what happens when business unusual becomes business as usual. And our guest today is Alexia Vernon from Moxie. Hi, Alexia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yay, we're excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So we're going to get into it, but before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So Step Into Your Moxie is a woman-owned and disability-owned business that supports coaches and consultants and business leaders to be able to have the mindset and skill set to walk into any room, into any conversation, or onto any stage and speak up unapologetically for themselves, for the ideas and issues that matter most to them, and call people to take action. And I thrive on helping people move through the discomfort that comes up when having high stakes conversations, when having to present in front of important decision makers, and also on the coach and consultant side, helping those folks like us be able to garner visibility for themselves and their businesses.
Wow.
So, first of all, I got chills when you said stand up for who they are and what they need to accomplish, right? Or whatever words you use, but I literally got chills. So I'm excited to hear more about this. And for full transparency, Liz doesn't even know this, but I actually reached out to Alexia based on another conversation we had. So I'm going to be like the guinea pig and we'll see just how good she is. Because while I have zero fear to be on stage, I'm sure you guys were all really shocked about that part of it. I have other issues about stage presentation. So, you know, we're gonna see just how good she is. And we will come back and share that experience with everybody. But how did you get started in this? Because if I'm not mistaken, you said you used to be afraid of speaking in public, right?
I grew up with absolute panic attacks every time I would have to get up in front of an audience and speak. But I like to say that our mess is often in our message, meaning that I recognized when I was somewhat accidentally thrust onto the speaking circuit in college after winning a talent competition and suddenly had to speak a lot, that once I got, and it took years to get to a place where I was comfortable in front of an audience, but it wasn't just an opportunity, but really a responsibility to use what I'd been through as a source of helping other people be able to avoid some of the mistakes that I made, or if they were in the middle of making them, move through them more quickly. And so when I hung out my shingle in 2007, it's been a while as a coach and consultant. Initially, my focus was not on communication. It was on whatever I could get hired to coach and consult and speak on. So I actually wrote a book about onboarding millennials into the workplace. That was one of my areas of expertise. I also came from the nonprofit world. So I love looking at social justice issues within organizations, talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, oftentimes through a gender lens. And then it took me about 3 or 4 years to recognize that while there were lots of things I was passionate about, there was one thing that I was called to do, and it was around communication. And that most of my life, I've had an on again, off again relationship with my own voice. As you can hear right now, it's really hoarse. And it's an adjacent story in terms of recovering from thyroid cancer and surgery really close to the vocal cords that's causing some of that. But every moment in my life that has really opened me up for exploration, good, bad, confusing, has always had a vocal component. And I think that's the way it is for a lot of us, that there's a communication component, whether it's our self-talk, whether it's the communication we're doing one-on-one or with groups, like that has such a profound role in our lives. And that's the stuff I'm so excited to help people with.
Okay, I gotta know what the talent competition was that you won.
It was Miss Junior America.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. What is it?
I don't think it exists anymore. So it was a competition that was popular, because I'm going to date myself now, in the late 80s and 90s. And I was one of the last Miss Junior Americas. But trivia, Lacey Chabert was one of the Miss Junior Americas before she was on Party of Five. I'm trying to think who else. Oh, and Tiffany Amber Thiessen was also one of them. So.
Okay.
Oh, now I know that name, right? Okay, wait. So is it like a I know this outdated term, so I apologize.
Beauty pageant?
Yes, I was gonna say beauty pageant. Is it a
that
scholarship pageant? Scholarship pageant, right?
Exactly. But the truth is that I did not win because of beauty. Like, I'm okay. I gussy up nice. But there was also things like an improv competition where you had to do an improvised sketch with the host. So like there was true like talent that was there.
Wow.
We had to speak twice, once about our outfits and how it represented our personality, and then once about an issue that mattered deeply to us. So there were definitely components that were talent, like I can support calling it a talent competition.
Yeah, for sure.
We had to perform, so I wound up doing ballet, which was something I'd done most of my life. But I think it was the improv ultimately that won the title.
No, did you have those questions ahead of time, or did you have to think on your feet?
Because we're going back. I was 19 at the time, and I just.
I know, I'm asking you like it was yesterday. So yesterday.
I mean, I'm trying to remember here. I think we knew we were going to be asked the question about our outfit. I don't know if we were told about the issue that was important to us. And then there were panel questions from the judges, and we definitely didn't have those in advance, because I remember going through rounds where judges would ask us questions about our life and our academic plans, and we just had to improvise on the spot.
Wow.
Wow, that's cool.
Cool. That's cool. So you were afraid of public speaking, and yet you entered these competitions.
Yeah. Come on, go outside your
I was
comfort
also
zone.
very desirous of funding for my education, and my desire for money outweighed the fear of public speaking. I'm just being candid.
Yeah,
And
we love that.
it was wonderful to have a lot of funding for my undergraduate education. I'm so grateful for that opportunity for those reasons, even though my opinion on talent competitions is much more complicated. In the aftermath of winning that, I wound up speaking in Las Vegas, where I lived at the time and where I call home now, to lots of youth development groups, and saw a lot of the inequities in our education system. It motivated me to do my undergraduate work in women's studies. I'd previously been in hospitality. And so I recognize now, looking through a justice lens at race and gender and class and ability, that talent competitions or beauty pageants are not always the breeding ground for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
But it worked out well for the one competition I entered and won.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, looking back, like hindsight is 2020, right?
Of course.
It's totally. So I'm interested in this because I think it relates to what we're talking about now. You know, we are billing this season as like the next normal, because we're definitely not back to normal or whatever that is. And we might never be, but a lot of people were forced to do things that made them uncomfortable, that got them out of their comfort zone during COVID-19. So was there anything, you know, during COVID-19 or as a, you know, responding to this new workplace that you had to do again, like you had to, all right, I have to get on stage to win this money. Is there anything you had to do last year?
Outside your comfort zone, yeah.
So I appreciate you talking about COVID not as a monolithic experience for businesses, because when I look at phase one, 2020, it's very different than things we've had to do in 2021. So I'll share some of that.
Yeah.
In March 2020, over the course of 6 weeks, I had to give back close to $50,000 for live events and speaking that were just flat out canceled, not moved to online. And it was very painful. So as you both know, I run my business with my husband. So there was no extra source of reserve funding. We were having to come out of pocket with a lot going into a live event that we simultaneously knew we had to reschedule. And at the same time, recognizing we would normally open enrollment for our mastermind for coaches and consultants on the back end of that live event. And that mastermind was all about how to win live speaking engagements. So we were definitely in a period where we looked at every option on the table. Do we go back to JOBs for a period of time? Does one of us do that?
The 3-letter word you don't say out loud, you just spell them.
We did not choose that option. Do we look at where do opportunities lie and quickly pivot plans we had in place, or do we stay the course and cross our fingers and toes that it'll be all right? And we chose the middle option because just letting things go was not going to work. We had to make some pivots really quickly to protect the revenue that we had coming in, which was small, and to be able to pay back everything the way that people deserve to be paid back given these unforeseen circumstances. And so the first thing that we did was look at what are the events that we do where the content of the event is still relevant, in some cases more relevant than ever before, and move it quickly online. Some of those events, though, around live public speaking, like we just had to lick our wounds and move on because that was not relevant in the moment. Then when we looked at our mastermind, we realized Our clients are primarily thought leaders, coaches, consultants, experts who may not need us to work with them right now on how to get live speaking engagements, but they absolutely need support in looking at how to bring the parts that are face-to-face of their businesses online and how to grow their visibility through online platforms and how to make sure that the pitches that they deliver are really relevant to what people are struggling with. And so we had great success. We rolled that out in a 2-week period. We hit all of our benchmarks for enrollment for that program. And that gave us then the runway to look at how is everything in our business going to adjust. So when we looked at our programs with organizations, a lot of that revenue continues to be down, truthfully, like our client side is up, but our organizational side is down. But we're okay because that doesn't feel like it's always going to be that way.
Right.
And then looking at a lot of what grew for us was executive speaker coaching, which makes sense. People were not necessarily needing to work on giving speeches, but they absolutely needed to work on how do we have challenging conversations within the workplace as leaders? How do we, for the first time, have a narrative where we're saying in front of people, we don't know what the answer is, and how to do that and look like a real human rather than a person in a suit who looks like they're hiding something. So that was where a lot of our work went. And then if I fast forward to 2021, where we do have live events lined up for the fall, suddenly we've had to have some of those conversations that we were training our clients to have around what are we doing to ensure safety? How are we handling people who don't feel comfortable coming, and being really transparent that for any program you enroll in that has a live component, if you prefer to defer to join a different cohort where you feel safe, we're on board. And then being very clear about what are the safety precautions. We are in Las Vegas, which for the foreseeable future has a mask mandate. We believe that it's pretty easy in the event spaces we use to encourage social distancing. So we're spacing people in such a way that they can have that level of comfort. And then making sure that we're doing smart things in terms of partnering with hotels that have great sanitation going on, great air filtration, and so forth. But then as we look at what we're doing moving forward, in 2020, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And so that,
oh my God, that's a lot.
It was a lot. And then shortly after my recovery, my mom was diagnosed with the same thing. And so like cancer and COVID and growing a community, a very strange triangle, but the triangles that I've had. And so recognizing that I want to make sure my business model is not so heavily predicated on me being the only person who's speaking up, because as much as my enthusiasm and energy for this work has not waned, it's only accelerated. There are times when health situations present themselves. And so the program that I'm perhaps most passionate and excited about that we're launching this November, that I'd always had the vision of doing, but it became such a priority during all of this, was actually certifying other people in our vocal empowerment process. And so knowing that even if I'm really busy, I might touch hundreds or 1,000 lives in the course of a year. If we are certifying consultants to be able to use this step into your Moxie system in their businesses, we have the potential to reach hundreds of thousands over the course of a year, if not millions over a lifetime. So
that's amazing.
Those are some of the things that have evolved from 2020 into 2021.
By the way, I love that you do that whole thing about saying, I don't know, and owning it. I really wish more of the leaders that we hear from on the television, otherwise, would
Government on down, right?
Yeah, thank you. We always joke that one day I'm going to end up somewhere I'm not supposed to be saying something I'm not supposed to say. Yeah, because they come with this, like, I have to show up as the expert in something I know nothing about. Like, just say you don't know, but we're working on this together, right? And I think that's almost a more powerful statement, to have the humility and ability to know what you don't know, and that this is something new across the board. Like, I love how somebody 3 months into the pandemic wrote a book about how he's the expert. I'm like, dude, it's been 3 months. How much of an expert can you be? But whatever, that's a whole different.
I want to say, and it's a testament to our corporate leaders, because I think corporate leaders often get a bad rap. How many recognized for the first time that puffing up and posturing and looking like a talking head was not only not going to serve them, but was not going to serve their people, and recognized, hey, we got to do things differently. I hope that willingness of so many organizational leaders to say, my favorite line, I don't know the answer to that question, but here's what I know. Here's what we'll do to find the answer, and here's how we'll keep reporting it out. Like, it's a structure that so many
Yes.
leaders are more and more willing to use, but that might trickle into other sectors, whether that's politics, whether that's the media, and so forth, because people are desperate for leaders in all realms that are honest
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
and that are willing to be uncomfortable communicating that honesty.
Right.
Yeah.
Get off my
No, I think
soapbox,
it's
but
so important.
that's
No,
what
no, I know
gets
we
me
love
up every day.
soapboxes. No, I think it's great. I want to just transition a little bit. You mentioned that you started business in 2007, but I know that you didn't even get diversity certified until 2020 or 2021. I don't know. The last 18 months are like kind of like a time warp. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
when,
started the process with
Sure.
you in 2020, and then in 2021 is when
Received
things
it.
have come.
So talk to us, tell us what took you so long. You're in the diversity space. Like, you get being an ally for both your own communities, right? Like, one of the things I love about the disability in community is that those with invisible disabilities, like you and I, right, our allies can be advocates for those with visible disabilities. So talk to us about like what it was in your head. Were there myths, were there misunderstandings, where you're just like, I don't want to do it? Like, what was it that took that time to get from that thought to where you ended up getting certified?
So there were a few key myths. I'm going to name two of them. One, that this is going to be so hard and time consuming and require me as the founder and president to step away from revenue generating activities, that I can't possibly create the time to do it. That was the number one myth. And I have to be honest, that was something that was also spoken to me from other consultants who certified. Like, you should be able to extract yourself from your business a whole lot to do a lot of this work. And I was not curious enough to ask more questions to see, is that really true? The second
Until you met the right one, Alexia. Until you
I'm
met the
being
right
very
one.
honest. You know, this was not Heather or Liz.
Yeah.
The second myth, which honestly, until we started our work together, I still assumed was true, was that if you're doing a lot of work with coaches and consultants, which we've had different phases in our business, there have been certain periods of time where 80% was being driven by corporate revenue and 20% by coach consultant revenue. And during those times, it felt like, well, if I could just get the time, I should get certified. But then after the birth of my daughter, things started to shift. And even though revenue went up, a lot of that revenue was coming from mastermind long-term coaching and consulting contracts. And so I thought, and the messaging that was reinforced was, well, maybe this isn't the best time to get certified if you're not getting a lot of contracts in the corporate space, or if a lot of your corporate contracts are for one-off keynotes. But the reason I'm calling that a myth is I realized that some of the best relationships that I've cultivated for work from coaches and consultants in the last 90 days has come from introductions in the disability in community from other coaches and consultants. So I didn't recognize it was not only about the relationships that I would cultivate with diversity suppliers, it was also about the relationships that would be cultivated from other coaches and consultants who, not to disparage the many coaches and consultants who aren't certified, but somebody who does go through that process has a level of investment in their business that's great. They understand the value of professional development. And a lot of those relationships haven't only been transactional, but have been, I want to understand the way that your business works so that if we have an organizational client where we see a need for what you do, we can make that recommendation and vice versa.
Yes, we love all that. That's so, yeah. That's
And can I just acknowledge too, for people who are listening, I chose the year with hands down the most constraints on my time to do this. So I chose the period where my daughter was at home. My husband and I were navigating her full-time education with her school, but still not full school days, at a time that we were pivoting our business, at a time where I was going through cancer treatment. And the amount of time that it took to go through it, maybe on a given week, 2 hours, but like over maybe a 2-week period, and then no more than 30 minutes, like a few different times. Like, this was just not a time consuming process because we didn't do it alone. We had great partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
Yay, we love that. I'm going to cut that clip out, Liz. I'm sticking it up everywhere.
Exactly. I mean, I love the myth busting too, because
yes,
we don't talk about it all. We talk to a lot of certified people, but we don't talk about like what holds people back from that. And I think that's so true. I think people get this, you know, and it compounds itself, right? There's the like, okay, I can't spend that much time away from my business, but you should be able to. So then you're also kind of beating yourself up about it when
Yeah.
it's like,
Like, what's wrong with me that I can't do that? Yeah.
right.
And also what you said about the other consultants and coaches, because that is a huge myth that if you're not looking directly to the Fortune 100, like what's the point of getting certified? And you've already, just in 90 days, you like already seen it. So I love that that was one of the myths that you have seen the other side of like the true
Yes.
perspective of it. I feel like a show, isn't there like a Mythbusters on TV? Like we should have our own version of Mythbusters, Liz.
I feel like there is on TLC or
Yeah, right.
I can't remember what station.
Yeah, we should do our own.
I do think so. So now your daughter's back in school though, right?
Not
And
today,
you're-
but
In general, right?
At some point.
And you're going back on stage, right? So it seems like things are kind of like moving, like, you know,
yes,
changing
I
the
would say
trajectory a
things
little
are
bit, right?
recalibrating.
Yes, that's a good word, recalibrating. There you go.
And one of the greatest takeaways has been that you can plan for everything that you think will happen, and the unknown always will. And recognizing that when that does happen, we survived, we figured it out, is incredibly confidence boosting in terms of not being so focused on trying to control all the outcomes, but recognizing that when uncertain times happen, the more diverse opportunities we have to plug into, the better. And so I
Yeah.
also see certification for us as an investment in our long term. Most of the most profitable long-time organizational relationships we've had were not cultivated overnight. They were cultivated over time. And so all of the matchmaking opportunities that come, and at this point, as we are talking, we only have our disability in certification. We're still waiting because there's been a backlog with the other credentialing bodies, but we know that those are coming, right?
Yeah.
But it's only been, I think, 4 months that we've even had our certification. But when I think about all the things I've been able to plug into, the disability in pitch contests that we entered, matchmaking
Good.
sessions as a part of their conference, and being able to have great ongoing conversations with some of the people we were invited to speak with. Like, these are things that I wouldn't have the opportunity to do had I not gone through certification. So while I recognize that none of those are typically going to translate to one conversation, you have a contract 30 days later, it's certainly been great to know that if we are interested in building more relationships, I don't have to do some of the things that we did earlier on in the business that feel very cold and not aligned, but instead we can be having conversations that can lead to clients with the very people that are those decision makers.
Right. So I want to go back to just a question about Moxie specifically. You said that you were afraid to go on stage, and a lot of your clients are afraid to be on stage in front of people. What would you say? And this is, I know we did not prep you for this, but welcome to Business Unusual.
And business in general, where you're asking right? Prepared answers to.
What is like the number one reason you find people are afraid to go on stage? And what is one tip? Obviously, you probably have a ton based on everybody's individual, like one tip that helps people who are afraid maybe to be in front of other people to try to start to get over that.
Great questions. And there are a few answers. So I'm going to hone in on the first one that comes to mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The number one reason I see for why people don't want to get onto stage is the fear, not that they're going to say something that's horrible or that people are going to berate them for not being credible. What I hear, whether somebody is a C-suite leader or they're a consultant who hung out their shingle a few months ago, is very similar, which is, I'm not ready yet. Now, while the reasons for not being ready are different, so that C-suite leader might recognize, I haven't done a lot of work on public speaking, so I'm not ready yet because the expectations for somebody with my title are great. And that consultant might say, I'm not ready, ... yet because my list is not big enough. I haven't generated enough revenue. I fill in the blank.
Right.
The problem with both of those is that irrespective of the reason you think you're not ready, the number one way to grow your credibility, likability, trust on the senior leader side, the number one way to get face time with prospective clients on the consultant side is speaking. And there's this myth that if we're not at 100%, we shouldn't go out there and speak. I don't know many people who've spoken and had horrible things happen after if they were a little off. Usually what happens is someone's a little off and maybe they didn't get as many opportunities as they could have, but they still got opportunities that they wouldn't have had they not shown up. And so
Right.
to answer the second question, what's my solution to that? It is to be self-aware and say, these are my areas for growth and address them. But in the meantime, shift that dialogue away from, I'm not ready, something horrible is going to happen. This is as ready as I can be right now. And here's what could happen as a result, because that tends to be really liberating and then enables you to recognize that anything that comes from it is better than nothing that will come if you stay waiting to be ready.
I love that.
Yeah,
Like not,
Liz and I have a expression that we always say, right? About when people are like, I'm not ready yet, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
But we always tell them, right?
yeah,
You
don't
put- you
worry,
put-
be crabby.
Don't worry, be crappy, or if you put it out and you're not embarrassed by what you originally put out, you waited too long.
Yeah.
The other thing I just need to say, and I think it's
Yes.
relevant to some of the adjacent conversations we've had, Heather, is that I find so many people are preparing the wrong parts of their presentation at the detriment of
Yes.
not really thinking about what is going to be of most value to an audience. And so whenever somebody says, I don't have a lot of time, then when I want to get on my soapbox and say, let's look into that. The second thing I want to say is let's look at the time you have and what are the places to rehearse the most.
Right.
And the number one place to rehearse, where most people rehearse the least because it's scare sighting, but oftentimes we label it as just plain scary, is the pitch, the offer at the end.
It's so true. It's so true.
When you reverse engineer from what is the ideal outcome you want from that speaking engagement? Is it to have somebody opt in for a digital guide? Is it for them to sign up for a call? Is it them to do something differently, to introduce you to someone at the workplace? But you get specific on what that outcome is, and then you use that as a filter for everything that you say before, not only in the pitch, but also in the stories you tell, the case studies, the stats you weave in. You're much more likely to have that presentation drive to action than if you're really worrying about how do I open and do I have a clever anecdote and am I coming across as credible and likable? Credibility and likability and trust come from understanding what's really relevant to your audience. So if you have offers that are really relevant to helping address pain points and personal motivators, then you are going to come across as credible, likable, and trustworthy, whether or not someone takes advantage of that enrollment offer or not, because you're going to be responding to the stuff people care deeply about.
I love that. Oh, I'm even more excited about our meeting now. Even more.
Yeah.
Excited.
So let's do it. What's your pitch?
What is my pitch?
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, where can they find you?
Yes. So for those who are coaches and consultants and experts who recognize that they have felt like they are thrashing around in terms of having programs and services that really resonate with clients, and they would find it dreamy to have plug and play curriculum that they could bring their prompts to, and want to understand how to have different structures to be able to speak for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes for a day or 2 days with companies. We've got a certification program, and people can learn more about that at stepintoyourmoxie.com and check out certification. Then on the organizational side, if you realize that people get really awkward in your workplace when they have to have high stakes conversations, my team and I would love to help you with that. And similarly, you can go to stepintoyourmoxie.com for more.
Awesome. And we'll link that to when we put this out there.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been so fun. Alexia, you're great. This has been fun.
Thank you.
I know, this
I'm
is
so
awesome.
glad you came into our world, into our ecosystem. We love
I am
this.
as well. And again, it's about the power of relationships. So one of
Yeah.
my mentors reached out when I said, I'm ready to do this. Who's the person? And she honestly didn't know. So she reached out to a diversity supplier at MGM who recommended you. And the rest is history.
That's history. That's awesome.
And then from Heather, you brought me into Liz's
Liz,
world. And
right.
now I'm so excited on the diversity mastermind side to have support with, okay, I'm
Good idea.
certified. Now let's be strategic and make sure that we're able to
Exactly.
leverage this so that we can impact as many lives as possible.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's scale it up. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And we'll be talking to you soon anyway, but we'll also see you next time on Business Unusual. Thanks.
Thank you.